I kept I kept shuffling this record. This was always, not always, but towards the end of last year, this was in my top 10. But especially in the last like month or two, maybe the onset of the winter, maybe go back and really dial into this album, man. So yeah, I don't know.
It's great when that happens, though. It's great when you have that. When an album's a grower like that. Some of the best albums ever. Across all genres, for me, have been albums that at first I heard and I was like, "This is fucking shit," and move on, and then you this is something that keeps pulling you back to it. Greetings, Legion. Welcome to episode 258 of Into the Necrosphere. This week, I am joined by Mike Hill for the conclusion, the grand finale of my countdown of the very best albums of 2024. This is our standing tradition. Mike Hill, of course, as you should know, is a member of the bands Tombs, Scorpion Throne, and Begotten Sons. He is also a fellow member of the Horseman of the podcasting apocalypse. He hosts the Everything Went Black podcast, and he's also the co-host of the excellent Necromaniacs podcast that comes your way every Thursday. We counted down our top 10s of the year. We reveal our favorite albums of the last 12 months, our number one album, I should say, of the last 12 months. And that is all going to be coming your way very shortly. But before we get to that, usually around this time of the show, I break you all off a piece of unsanctioned filth. But we're going to take a brief detour from the standard programming for this episode only. Given the momentousness of the occasion, given the fact that we are celebrating the very best music that we heard over the last 12 months, I thought it'd be good to remind us all of the best album of 2023. And that record was, of course, Primordial with their absolutely masterful album, How It Ends, released on Metal Blade Records. Here's a track for you right now off that album. It's called We Shall Not Serve. We Shall Not Serve by Primordial, taken from the Into the Necrosphere official best album of 2023, How It Ends, available on Metal Blade Records. And if for whatever bizarre reason you have yet to check this one out, as always, I will post a link to the Primordial Bandcamp in the description to the podcast. If you go there and you buy yourself any music, you let old Alan and the boys know who sent you. I think it's probably high time I get Alan Averill back on this podcast as well. So this year, I want to see if I can make a face-to-face happen. And that's a face-to-face I would be prepared to travel for. So I'm going to reach out to him, see what I can do. My friends, if you happen to be tuning into the Necrosphere for the first time, welcome to the Legion. Make sure that you hit the subscribe button, follow the show on the socials, on Spotify, or wherever you listen to it on. Also, be aware that I am a member of the Horseman of the Podcasting Apocalypse, as I alluded to earlier. We are a group of dedicated individuals and content creators that vanquish mediocrity wherever we find it. We start on a Monday with Brandon Legion and Horrorwolf 666. Yours truly casts hexes and slays poses every Tuesday right here on Into the Necrosphere. On a Wednesday, we've got Sensei Mike Hill, my guest this week, giving you a first dose of his podcast, Everything Went Black. He returns, of course, on a Thursday with Necromaniacs, one of my favorite podcasts of the week, co-hosted by the outlaw Mike Scandado and the Professor Jeff Kashid. We also, of course, have on a Wednesday the Middle Eastern Marauder, my brother from another mother, Cheyenne of the band Trivax, unleashing Iblis manifestations. On a Thursday and again on a Sunday, you get two servings, two installments of Soul Mox, and that is hosted by the Sinister Minister, the Reverend Carl Haikara. He was my guest on last week's episode. Much love for the Reverend on this podcast, and much love for his podcast too. So make sure you check all of those out. Of course, also make sure you stick around after my conversation with Mike, because we're going to get to the weekly news rant, and we're going to be listening to a bunch of new music. We're going to be most likely slating the new Rivers of Nihil, which for some bizarre reason, some people are already declaring Album of the Year 2025. God only knows what strain of crack they've been smoking. I'm also going to be talking about a recent cancellation of a band who may or may not appear on my top 10 of 2024. We're also going to be talking about the Black Sabbath reunion. I'm going to answer a couple of questions that you guys sent in, and much, much more. That's coming up later in the show. First up, though, brace yourself as I welcome Mike Hill back to Into the Necrosphere, and we reveal the very best albums of 2024. Mike Hill, welcome back to Into the Necrosphere. This is the first time I think we've gone an actual whole year without you being on the show, and I know, and it's partly my fault, because I know we've been wanting to do this thrash crossover 666 countdown with the outlaw Scandado, but he's changed. I've changed his name, by the way. He's no longer the sheriff. Yeah. He's now the outlaw. But yeah, dude, it is great to see you again. How's everything been going?
It's doing well. Happy New Year. It's it seems like we're constantly in touch just with our thread, our thread. So that's cool too, but yeah, seeing you in person, in person, quote unquote, is it's been way too long. Yeah. In general, things are going good. Looking forward to getting the new year kicked off properly, and
And just before we get started with the countdown, I mean, you got a lot on your plate musically this year. I caught the back end of the conversation you had on Necromaniacs, and Tombs is you mentioned. I think the album is basically done.
It's done. It's being mixed right now. We're still working through the mix, but we have a mastering date in February, and then they tell me it'll be out before the summer. So we'll see. I have my doubts about that, but me sort of with my take on it, it'll probably be sometime in the summer or early fall that the record will be out.
Yeah, I mean, I think my business mind always kicks in when it comes to stuff like this. I would say Summer to me is a bit of a dead time when it comes to releasing albums because too many people go on holiday. They don't pay enough attention to stuff. You can see it reflected in some of the best off lists as well. But I would say, like, if they're smart, probably October time they want to put that out.
I'm totally
if
fine
if they are going to put it out in the latter half of the year, put it out in October.
Yeah, that's my the push has been to do it before the summer, but like I know how things go and delays and pressing plants and things like that. So we'll see how it goes.
Well, I mean, I've heard one song, the demo that you sent me, and just to whet people's appetites, to whet the Legion's appetites, that was the strongest material I've heard from Tombs ever. I mean, I've been a big fan. I've been a fan of the band before you and I ever met. We met because I was a fan of the band.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But I heard that and I spoke to Katie about it separately, and I was like, this is the direction this band needs to go in. It is fantastic.
Thank you very much, man. I mean, you have no. I mean, a lot of guys in bands listen to the show and it's like, yeah, you don't have any perspective at all about like what you're doing. Like, no one is listening to their demos and being like, oh yeah, this is like the sickest thing ever, man. It's like, you think it's like, man, I'm so tired of listening to this fucking song. I can't wait to not think about it anymore. You know what I mean? So yeah, I appreciate that. Really. Thank you.
Well, I will say, and I was going to say at the risk of offending you, I don't think you should be offended by this, but there were elements of that song I heard that took me back to elements of my two favorite songs taken from your least favorite Tombs album. And those songs being Underneath and Shadows of the End of the World off the Grand Annihilation. There was like, there were things there where I could think to myself, like that new track would sit quite comfortably beside those two songs as an evolution of what you did there.
I don't take that as an insult at all because it's not offensive, because that record, conceptually, the stuff on that record is pretty cool. It just was a little undercooked, I think, and not executed the best. And none of it has to do with the recording. Like the production on that record, I think, is great. And that's Eric Rutan did that one. So
about to say,
but
a fucking man's man. Eric Rutan.
Oh yeah. No, he did a great. That's actually. We did a couple records with Eric, and that's sonically the one that I think is superior. And but that's the ideas on there. Just I think now I'm able to pull that off a little bit more, especially with the guys that are in the band in this lineup are able to to play the material, to execute it a little bit better. So that's why I think I feel that way about it.
Just a side comment as I brought up Underneath. There's moments, and we're going to talk about it no doubt when we talk about our top 10s. There's moments in a song or on an album where every possible element just clicks together in absolute perfect synergy. At the end of Underneath, where you do the Drown in the Darkness bit, from the melody through to the drums, through to the way the guitar kind of just enhances what you're doing with the clean singing. That is just absolute perfection for me. I mean, Ralph uses the phrase "chef's kiss." That is chef's kiss.
You're making me uncomfortable now. But yeah, no, thanks.
Wait till I take my shirt off.
Dude, it's January. I don't think anyone's taking their shirt off right now, man.
We actually have sunshine at the moment, although they've been saying there's 100-mile-per-hour winds coming later on. When I woke up this morning, it was like it's like a Burzum album came to life outside. Oh, yeah. But it's right now we've got sunshine. All right, well, let's get down to fucking business. Very quickly, as we're about to enter the home stretch of this honor roll, I'll very quickly just summarize my 30 through to 11. So at number 30, we had Vitriol with Suffer and Become. At number 29, we had Deceased with Children of the Morgue. At number 28, we had Nightside with Death from the North. 27 was Heathen Deity with Satan's Kingdom. 26 was Oranzi Pazuzu with Montu Tauja. At number 25 was Destructor with Indomitable. 24 was Deathless Void with the Voluptuous Fire of Sin, a Brandon Legion recommendation. Number 23, Hordemreif den Friede Macht. 22, Veil Burner, The Duality of Decapitation and Wisdom. At number 21, Otherworld Tenebris. At number 20, Modern Rites with Endless. At number 19, Forgotten Tomb with Night Floating. At number 18, Horned Almighty, Contagion Zero. Number 17, 1349, The Wolf and the King. Number 16, Brodequin with Harbinger of Woe. Number 15, Monty Penumbra with Austere Dawning. Proof that only posers release their end-of-year lists at the end of October, because Monte Penumbra came out in December, and I don't see it on any other list aside from mine. Black Curse, Burning and Celestial Poison. Night Shall Drape Us at number 13 with Lunatic Choir. At number 12, True Black Dawn of Thick Circling Shadows. At number 11, Bythos, Chthonic Gates Unveiled, which brings us to number 10. But I'm not going to do my number 10 first. Gentleman's choice, since you're the guest. What did you have at number 10?
Thank you very much. So my number 10 is Inexorable Nexus by Diocletian, the nuclear war now. From New Zealand. They're my go-to war metal band. Ever since I heard Gisundrian back in, I don't think I heard it in 2014, but ever since I heard that record by them and the track Cleaved Asunder, I've been a huge fan. And some of the angriest, darkest music ever. It's like that's fueled my my early morning kettlebell workouts for the last all last year. So yeah, that's my number 10.
Cleaved Asunder was interestingly the song that introduced me to the band, and it was on an episode of Everything Went Black. I remember hearing the song, going, "Holy Jesus, what is this?" You have been pretty top notch when it comes to playing. I wouldn't necessarily say like rare or off the wall songs, but your selection at the end of Necromaniacs and Everything Went Black is usually something I look forward to on both podcasts, because I've picked up so many different things from it. Boy Harsher was one as well. I picked that up off an episode of I think it was Everything Went Black. I was like, this is fucking fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, they're like they're great. That's such a great band, definitely.
But yeah, dude, Cleaved Asunder, superb song. Diocletian, great band. Our fellow horseman of the podcasting apocalypse, Cheyenne, he and Trivax went out on the road with the Diocletian gang as well when they came here to the UK.
I saw that. That's incredible. I wish that tour would come to the States. That'd be awesome. Was there any protests or anyone crying about Diocletian coming to the UK or anything like that?
No protests. However, I suspect that and I speak under correction on this. I if memory serves me correctly, they did the Diocletian tour the way that they did the Destroyer 666 show earlier on last year, where people bought tickets and you got emailed the venue like an hour before the time. And I mean, the irony of the Destroyer 666 show was it was held at a quite prolific gay club in London. The entire club is just, every staff member there is, a minority amongst a minority. They looked like they were having the fucking best time of their lives. Everyone was super cool. The atmosphere was really chilled. And Paige, who, comes with me to shows, but is not of the scene, even she pointed out afterwards, she was like, that's the most relaxed and the friendliest vibe I've seen at a show that I've been to with you ever. So, that's a bit of an irony, but yeah, great choice at number 10, sir.
Thank you.
Speaking of sketch bands, though, there's a couple of bands on various lists that are going to make no doubt yours. They're certainly on mine. So we'll get to them as we get to them. But at number 10, I've got Permafog with their self-titled album. Came out on March the 8th, released independently for some inexplicable reason. I don't know how a label didn't pick this up. I would only assume it's because either the band intentionally didn't bother trying to court any label attention, or it's just the fact that they're based in Australia, play live shows or limit their live shows specifically to, the local area. But they do feature amongst their ranks the great Jason Pepiat of Psychroptic, one of the best dudes ever. As a band, it really caught me by surprise. Jason had posted a live clip of them probably about 6 months prior to the record coming out. And I messaged him. I was like, holy shit, dude, this is fucking fantastic. Like tier 1 second wave worshipping black metal, but with like all great Australian bands, that slight off-axis creative twist to what they do. And he sent me the album before it got put out, and I just fell in love with it. And it was one that I kept returning to last year. One I think a lot of folks slept on, but they should not, because as I said, if you're into grim sounding black metal, but black metal that's got enough atmosphere, it's one of the best releases easily of last year. And it's, again, like many of the albums that made it onto my list that aren't in the top 5 per se, in another year, Permafog could very easily have been in the top 5.
Yeah, they're great, and just in general, Australia has their own style, when it comes to extreme music and black metal in particular. And if you know me, I'm a huge fan of just the films, the music. A lot of stuff from Australia is like, definitely, I'm a big fan of that stuff.
Yeah, I completely agree. They didn't have quite as stellar a year on my list this year as they've done previously. I think I've got 3 entries from Australia on the list. I mentioned this on last week's episode, but the US really were the big victors of the top 30 this year. I think it's either 9 or 11 albums from US bands, which speaks to either the cycle landing at the right time, but also as we'll see, some fucking magnificent bands in your home country. So, right, what have you got at number 9?
At number 9, actually, the U.S. is in the minority. Actually, in my top 10 here.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, the next couple are U.S. bands, but we'll see.
Top 10. Sorry to interrupt. The top 10 on my list is 4 U.S. bands. So, find out who they are in due course.
So number 9 for me is Molded by Broken Hands by Gray Skies Fallen. Their new LP on Profound Lore. And full disclosure here, Rick Habib is a friend of mine. He's also in Reeking Aura. Mm-hmm. But I've been a fan of these guys. They've been around for decades. And that kind of funeral doom sound is like, in the United States at least, I always associate that sound with like Staten Island and like New Jersey. Because there's so many great bands, including Evoken, that are from that area. And they're just part of that melodic, just depressive doom sound that emanates from this area. And they had a cool video for a single, Knowing That You're There. Just a great band. I don't know if you're familiar with them at all.
I am. Well, firstly, very familiar with Reeking Aura. I've had Rick and Big Will on the podcast. Great guests. Reeking Aura is a great band. I had a bit of a thing last year. I don't know why, but I just kind of started to gravitate, and it's a very common theme throughout almost everything on my list. I started to gravitate towards more abrasive, gnarlier music, and with the exception of one band that will come up later on in the list, I just, for some reason, I didn't have an appetite to listen to anything that was particularly doomy or anything like that. I just wanted to hear mean sounding music. Sure. So I'd listened to the Gray Skies Fallen record. I liked it. It wasn't one, I don't think I ever gave it a fair chance, but I am very confident that it's going to be one that I probably end up falling back on at some point when I get in the mood for that kind of music and I go, fuck, I shouldn't have slept on this. it should have been on the top 30 list. For what it is, I love it. It is very, very good. But it was as I said, I don't think I spent enough time with it to give it a proper shake.
Oh yeah, I mean there's so many great records that came out this year. It's like now I'm discovering stuff from 2024 that like I'm like, how'd this slip by me? You know what I mean? So yeah, you can't listen to everything, give it proper attention.
Well, especially not nowadays. I mean, again, you went through periods last year, where there were like 5-6 great records that came out. And, again, we both come from the time when one great album comes out in 3 months rather than, 3 great albums on one weekend. One great album that comes out, you're sitting there picking through every last bit of minutia, like every fucking lyric, everyone they thank,
Totally.
like I knew the finest details of the Morbid Angel Covenant cover. Like every little nook and cranny of that table with a book with a grimoire on there and stuff like it. Every single thing about it. And it was kind of, it was a magical time, but we just really spoiled for choice now.
Yeah.
All right, now, speaking of being spoiled for choice, one of the best dark atmospheric black metal releases of 2024, Holder, Verses in Path, came out on $20 spin. $20 spin, generally speaking, is one of those labels like Profound Lore where the quality control on those labels are good enough that if they put out something, I am at the very least curious to hear what it's going to sound like. A couple of folk that listened to the podcast were really big fans of the previous Holder record, Godslastering, Hymns of a Forlorn Peasantry, that came out in 2021, and it never quite bit with me. When I heard Verses in Oath, however, absolutely blew me away. I think that Holder, I mean, obviously it's a one woman project. She does a fantastic job of kind of like Permafog, combining her love of Norwegian and Scandinavian black metal with giving it a bit of a raw edge, and in the way that Permafog gives it an Australian twist, she gives it a US twist. Like there's whiffs of Leviathan and whiffs of the US old guard in what she does, more so on Verses in Path than on anything else that I've heard by Holder previously. And again, as I said, knocks it out of the park. There is nothing on this album that's not perfectly appointed and perfectly deployed.
Yeah, it's a great record, and I agree with your assessment of it when it comes to style. Definitely.
All right, what have you got at number 8?
Another similarly sounding band, another U.S. band, and this is Mother of Graves, The Priapt of Absence, and coincidentally, that's also on Profound Lore, a label that, as you mentioned, is a very tightly curated, roster of bands. And on pretty much anything that Profound Lore puts out, as well as $20 spin, I'll at least like, okay, cool, let's give it a listen. Very melodic death metal, doom with a heavy doom, not melodic death metal, but like death metal influenced melodic doom. That's how I would characterize this record. And another full disclosure, my friend Chris Morrison is in this band. He used to play in this band Harakiri, the Harakiri that was on Willowtip years back.
As opposed to Harakiri for the Sky, which I expect to see banned from the scene. But,
I wanted to make very clear that we're talking about band we're talking about. And there are at least 2 other bands named Harakiri over the years too, but this is the one that was on Willowtip. And their EP too that came out was a year, 1 or 2 years ago, that grabbed me too. And I didn't even know Chris was in the band, and I was like, oh, who, Mother of Graves, and like, it just, for me, these, especially with my number 8, my number 9. I've been listening to a lot of music that has like these kind of layers, and like you listen to it and you're like, oh wow, there's like a clean guitar part here, or some synth like buried way below everything. And I had I've seen Gray Skies Fallen and Mother of Graves live as well, but Mother of Graves live is like amazing. I saw them in a very small space for the first time a couple of years ago, and I was like, it sounds just like the record when you see them live, especially in that context. There's no big sound system or anything like that. So they're my number 8.
I love the record as well. I said about it on the podcast when I spoke about the album that they are a band that they play in that doom metal space, but they never forget that at its core, metal needs to be something that makes you tap your foot and makes you move your head, makes you pull a stank face when you're listening to it. They have fantastic and even beautiful flourishes of melody across the album, but they keep the groove, they keep the heaviness there as well. And that, to me, that's essential in setting them apart from a lot of bands that do the similar style. I thought Where Shadows Adorn was a great debut. This, I thought, was a big step up. So I'm very excited to see what they do next. And I would love to see them live, because again, it's something I thought when I listened to the record. This is music that would go over extremely well live, even for folks that don't know who Mother of Graves are, because it's something that you can quite easily get into. But then, as you say, when you spend more time with it, you start to realize, like, this is very complex as well. There's a lot going on beneath the surface that you don't hear, at first pass.
Yeah, I mean, Chris is an incredible musician, and it's what's the funniest thing about it is when I went to go see them play, I realized, like, I know all the guys in the band too, just from years of like touring. And this guy played in this band that we played with back in 2005, and I don't know, it's awesome when that happens,
Yeah. So at number 8 for me, also a doom metal band, perhaps not one that's necessarily known for neck snapping, but and I'm unashamed in how big of a fan I am of this band. A band that was caught up in some controversy and discussion at the back end of last year, but My Dying Bride, A Mortal Binding, released by Nuclear Blast on April the 19th. Carl and I spoke about it on the previous episode. We both our consensus was when the record came out that it was the perfect follow-up to 2015's Feel the Misery. I've been a fan of My Dying Bride since the mid-90s. And I like Paradise Lost, I was kind of always on board for any changes they made to their sound too. I'm amongst a select few people that didn't think that 34.77 or 788% complete is terrible. But when they got back to the heavier stuff, Songs of Darkness, Words of Light, I think probably still is one of their best records. And actually, I think this album sits quite comfortably in that pantheon as well. It has all of the things that have always made this album great, from Aaron's vocals through to, really somber, sorrowful melodies. And the way I see it is, to convince somebody like me, given what I generally gravitate towards musically, My Dying Bride must be doing something right. So, yeah, a 10 out of 10 record. Very unfortunate that we should have these, or that they should effectively have gone on hold right as they released this record, because I really felt like the album deserved a couple of shows, at least some sort of victory lap, because it was a tremendous comeback, in my opinion.
Yeah, this record appears on this list for me too. It's I mean, what can you say? I've always been a huge fan of Aaron's vocals. I think, for me, as someone who attempts to sing and considers himself a vocalist, he's been an inspiration for me personally, especially with the clean singing, and that's like a very difficult thing to do when you come out of the scene like we're in, where you can hide behind, like, not knowing what you're saying, and it's just another texture layered in there with the guitars and drums and bass. But when you actually try to, like, enunciate and, like, be clear, it's like a very sort of revealing thing to try to do. And his approach to doing that, and his success at doing it, has inspired me to try and he is, as well as other singers too, but he's definitely someone who's influenced me. And this record, it's like, if you like My Dying Bride and you want to hear a great record, it's not like this covers any new ground or anything like that, but it's just a solid, like, okay, cool, there's a new My Dying Bride record out.
Yeah. 2 questions for you. First one, who are some of your other favorite clean singers? And not necessarily even from this scene. I mean, I know you have a very wide taste in music, which I think partly why we get on so well. But so, like, outside of My Dying Bride, like, who are some of your favorite clean singers?
Probably my ultimate number one favorite is Carl McCoy from Fields of the Nephilim, and then Michael Gira from the Swans, Peter Murphy, from Bauhaus, and from his own, Peter Murphy. Those are probably my top 3, as far as, like, influences that, really And, Ian Curtis from Joy Division, just his delivery, his just that you feel like the just pain and loneliness in that guy's voice, and as even young, even before I even thought about singing clean, like I was like, man, this guy's like really putting forth like this like intense emotional effort, so that's pretty much the top for me, really, and Aaron's in there, Pete Steele, of course,
about
from
say the Pete Rod of Steel can't not be on that list.
right, Rod of Steel. Yeah.
How do you feel? This wasn't one of the original questions. How do you feel about Neon Nightmare? Because I went on a bit of a tear about them on the news rant a couple of weeks ago. I just flatly refuse to accept. I will never accept anybody trying to continue the legacy. I don't give a fuck how loving it is or what the intention is. But to me, there is one typo negative. Maybe I feel so passionate about it too. That band is very special to me in many, many reasons. I don't want anything to sully, even be associated with them besides their discography.
No, I agree. I mean, I don't back it. I think that you gotta, especially since Pete's gone, he passed away from this mortal coil. It's like you really should pay respect to him and just, all right, he ended an era in music, really, in my opinion, especially,
he did.
And growing up in the area here in the tri-state area, New York City, New Jersey, like Pete Steele was like, and Typo Negative was such icons across several different, in metal and in hardcore, with the Carnivore material, him writing the lyrics basically for Agnostic Front, on Cause for Alarm. He's an icon, and you have to kind of be respectful of that. And, and also I never really like that obvious coattail sort of ride that happens a lot of times in music where it's like, okay, we're going to build something off of this thing that ended, and we're just going to keep kicking this dead horse, for, no pun intended, but, and that's my take on it,
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think if you're going to do a tribute, then do something that is heartfelt, but in your own style. I think Mark Lanigan did an incredible tribute to the Gun Club when he did the cover of Carry Home. And I mean, he very openly speaks about it being his favorite band, and it influenced a lot of his writing, but he never overtly tried to sound like them. They influenced him an awful lot. He speaks about it very, if you listen to that autobiography of his, like, he talks about it an awful lot. But there's just something more sincere and more effective about that to me than just trying to sound like them.
Totally, and yeah, it's just it's one thing to be influenced, and it's another thing to be kind of like a replicator,
Yeah,
and that's my take on it, really.
And the thing too, just as a final point on that, there was a certain kind of tongue-in-cheek arrogance that Pete Steele had, cannot be copied. It doesn't matter who you are. Like one of my favorite singers is Josh Homme of Queens of the Stone Age. If they announced today Josh is going to start singing for Typo Negative, I would go, that is the fucking worst idea I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, I agree.
So the other question I had for you is favorite My Dying Bride album up to this point in time.
That's a good was it Unleash the, what the hell's that record? Now let's see, this is Unleash the Swans. Turn Loose the Swans. Turn Loose, it's early still here for me. You got to give me a little bit of slack here. Turn Loose the Swans. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Good choice. Mine, as I mentioned, Songs of Darkness, Words of Light. Carl and I are going to do a retrospective on My Dying Bride soon. So actually, I was curious to know what you thought.
What's another one that's not too shabby is and once again, I'm gonna fuck the title up. Map of my failures.
A map of all our failures.
A map of all it, because it has that like the song, the title track is probably one of my favorite My Dying Bride songs.
Yeah. Also, what an incredible name for an album.
Oh,
I get really stuck on that recently, but like album titles and band names can like either great or like I just instantly fall in love with them. But I've always thought the title, a map of all our failures, it just captures everything that My Dying Bride is about so perfectly.
Well, that the vocals in that song are like so like I would when I found that discovered that record, I listened to that song. Like, I'm like, this is like dissecting like what he was doing, vocally. And I was like, this is like really, really cool stuff.
Okay, I think we are up to your number 7 now.
My number 7 is Cutting the Throat of God by Ulcerate, out on the great Debu Mamorti Productions, like another label that if it comes out on that label, I will most likely listen to it, and it will most likely be something that I continue listening to. So Ulcerate are like one of the most incredible live bands I've ever seen. And you listen to the sort of the intricacy of all of the instruments that are going on in that record, and you're like, how do these guys play live? And then I don't know, probably about 12 years ago, we did a short tour in the United States with them, and I didn't really know those guys that well. Really cool guys, and every night it was just like incredible, man. And the guitar playing, and it has that angular quality to it when executed in metal is really, really catches me. It's like this very progressive kind of thing, yet it still has this like aggressiveness to it, this bite, this intensity. And the drummer in that band is like, fantastic.
Well, I don't know whether, I'm sure you actually probably spoke to him directly about it as well. I don't know whether you recall a couple of years ago when I interviewed Sam Bean of Werewolves, and he spoke about talking to Jamie about how they approach playing live. Jamie mentioned that he effectively goes in, and he obviously has he's got a skeleton in his mind of what the song sounds like and the movements within each song, but he effectively improvises, and the band just follow along with it. That I was gobsmacked when I heard that.
Yeah, I mean they're like the Ornette Coleman trio of like extreme metal. It's like, I don't know if it comes from just something like that. If you read about jazz players, like they just would rehearse all day, and that's how they would approach it. Like it's like we have like a framework, and then the gig is us kind of going off of that. So, I don't know, those guys must rehearse a lot. And if not, it makes them even more genius to me if they just get together once in a while, because that blew my mind. You know what I mean? And once again, they're a one of a kind band, if you ask me. Ulcerate.
I completely agree. Completely and utterly unique sound. Yes, you could, if you were going to compare them to anybody, you would probably throw Immolation in there as the first comparison. But they have evolved, and I would say that evolution really took another step forward on Cutting the Throat of God into entirely their own entity. They're one of the darkest, most oppressive sounding bands, but they come with an atmosphere all of their own, but with an intensity that is just unparalleled. We're talking about album titles, but the previous album title, Stare into Death and Be Still, was again just the perfect way to very articulately summarize everything that this band is about. Which, interestingly enough, also they are my number 7.
Oh, wow! Look at that.
Yeah, there you go. So I absolutely loved it. It was a little higher, and honestly, my 1 through 7 is probably reasonably interchangeable depending on the mood that I'm in. But I think they did a tremendous job with this record. I'm finally going to be breaking my Ulcerate live duck when I see them at Fortress in July. So excellent. Really, really looking forward to that.
Definitely.
So what have you got for us at number 6?
Number 6 is a surprise to me, and how much I actually enjoy this record, because I was never really interested in their other material. And if this is Sub Rosa in Aeternum by Tribulation. And full disclosure, I never really listened to these guys on their other albums. And when I heard them on your show, I heard some of the material they were playing. I'm like, wow, I should look into this, and yeah, it's I have been listening to that record ever since I heard it on Into the Necrosphere. And the things that I responded to were the things that people have been trying to sell me on with this band for years. About how it's like, oh, you like these guys. They're this kind of like black metal, like gothic sort of sounds. But I just never really heard those things when I listened to their other records. And then it's not, they're fine. They're a fine band that just didn't resonate with me until this record. And there's a very, and you probably, you have to agree, there's a very bold move into that sort of, atmosphere of, it has like this feels of the Nephilim sort of vibe to it, or there's a lot of that influence on the record. And, it's one of those things where like me and my fiance were driving around. I was driving and I put this record on and she was like, "Oh, who is this?" And I'm like, cause she likes metal, but not the super dark, grim stuff that, we listen to. And I was like, "Oh, it's this band Tribulation." She'd never heard of them. And, she was like, "Oh, this is cool." She thought they were like a goth band or something like that. So yeah.
Tribulation was a band I was never sold on. Always heard people raving about them. Tried listening to every record that came out, never got into it. And then Carl was on the news rant, and one of the first singles of Sub Rosa in Eternum came up, and we both were like, "Holy shit, that's good." Yeah. And I think, my take on it, and I spoke to Adam from Tribulation about this when he was on the podcast. My take on it was, I think the magic to me in Sub Rosa and Eternum is it is really the sound of a band who have truly and utterly found their voice. Like, I know the previous records were well received. They had a big fan base already. But this to me sounds like a band that is fully in their element. Like they have found exactly what they would love making. And there's the idea that, when you love what you're doing, that's what you're best at doing. I completely agree with you. I think it's a magnificent album. Reminds me a bit of things like Moonspell, Moonspell at their absolute best, but also kind of has this, it's got a gothic element to it, but it's got like a film noir bent to it as well.
Yeah.
Which also came out on all of the music videos, which I also loved. I think, I would say the marketing for Tribulation's Sub Rosa and Eternum really was one of the most masterful things I saw in 2024, because it was so well packaged and so well put together, and all those music videos were great. They all shared a common feel. The look of the album, I just think as an overall package, they knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah. Okay, my number 6, High on Fire, Cometh the Storm, put out by MNRK Heavy on April the 19th. No secrets about how much I adore this band. It was one of the greatest joys of my entire life having Matt Pike on the podcast. I've said it before, but in case anyone's watching into the Necrosphere for the first time or listening for the first time, the magic to me in Matt Pike is he's one of those rare guitar players that sounds like he just picks up a guitar, starts playing, and music is just shooting from his fingers. He's got the most effortless way of delivering the riffs that he writes that clearly a lot of thought and a lot of work has gone into. And on this album, it's just more of the same. I mean, there's nothing about Come of the Storm that is in any way different to anything that they've put out. Maybe a little more of the Turkish influences and some of the Middle Eastern influences that Jeff Matz brings to the table, but executed in flawless High on Fire fashion. Matt Pike sounds fantastic. I think since his sobriety, he seems to be in a really good place. Like, he physically looks like a changed man. To me, just another installment in one of the most consistently brilliant discographies in metal. And I feel like more people should appreciate this band, but then at the same time, I also feel like, this is the chef's selection. This is the dry aged steak. It's not for everybody. The people that know, they know.
Yeah, I mean, High on Fire really is like the modern sort of Motorhead in a lot of ways, where it's you don't really deviate that much. It's like some of the greatest bands are they just do that thing and they execute it flawlessly every single time. And there's enough of a new element there that keeps you interested. That's how I feel about High on Fire. But for me, they've always been more of like a live band. You know what I mean? Like I like their records, but I really like watching them play live. You know what I'm saying?
Infuriatingly, I have had tickets to see them 3 times, and every time something fucked up has come up that I have not, that has meant that I've not been able to see them. So I'm desperate to watch them, but I've not seen them yet. If I ever do, though, I'm going to see if I can hit up Matt Pike again and just remind him and say, hey, you were really impressed that I liked Ethereal. Now, fucking do me a favor and play it live. that like, if I had to choose one song to listen to forever for the rest of my life, that's on the short list for sure. That's like in the top 3. I cannot tell you how much I love that song. I think probably, I mean, I know High on Fire was my most listened to band according to Spotify last year. I'd say probably 50% of that is just repeating Ethereal continually, and that, of course, being Ethereal off of this Death is This Communion.
Those guys play loud, definitely.
Yeah, loud. And he's just, the thing I love about, he's got this look when he plays live, like he's just totally in his fucking own zone. And I've always loved that. I love seeing a musician kind of go to that place. Dimebag Darrell was the same to me. You watch Dimebag playing guitar on stage, and it's like the video of Pantera at in Russia at Monsters of Rock. I mean, he's just on a fucking completely different dimension than most other people.
Yeah, there's that flow state that people always talk about, you know?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what those guys reach.
Yeah. All right, what have you got for us at number 5?
My Dying Bride, A Mortal Binding, which we extolled the virtues of recently. So, yeah, that's my number 5 is the My Dying Bride new album. And like I said, great record, you know.
All right, well, now comes the fucking sketch territory. I said there's some controversial stuff being included here. So, my number 5, an album entitled Veneration of Medieval Mysticism and Cosmological Violence. It's only one black metal band with album titles that long, and they're called Inquisition. Now, Nathan made a very fucking funny joke when we would stop recording the episode that he did with me, and we were talking about Inquisition, and he was like, you know, I don't go to Dagon for fucking advice on child minding. I go there because I want to hear songs about the devil. In my opinion, Bloodshed Upon the Empyrean Altar Beyond the Celestial Zenith, released in 2016, one of the best black metal albums of all time, no question about it. Black Mass for a Mass Grave that Inquisition put out in 2020, one of the biggest disappointments of all time. And then when this album came out, I sort of saw the single had been released, and I was like, well, you know, I fucking hated Black Mass for a Mass Grave so much. You know, I barely was able to feign any interest. And then I listened to it, and my jaw just hit the floor. I was like, oh my God. Almost everything that was great about previous Inquisition records, particularly any records released post-2010, present on this record. But I feel like the melody and the songwriting, the songcraft on Black Mass for a Mass Grave, which was just a huge misfire, is brought back onto this album, but refined and executed correctly. In many ways, to me, Veneration of Medieval Mysticism feels like the album that Black Mass for a Mass Grave should have been. And I think it's one of the best Inquisition albums ever released. And, you know, if I base my criteria on what I listened to most last year, this is one of the albums I listened to most last year, I still continually go back to it. I suspect I will continue to go back to it for years to come.
I mean, they make solid records, definitely. I enjoy listening to their records, but I've seen them live a couple times. Like to me, in my opinion, they can't really pull it off live. But yeah, be that as it may, that's a solid record. And also to address their controversy, you know, I don't think this is my take on it, the Mike Hill take on this guy's you know, to controversy. I would say that he was a child sort of molester or a kind of pedophile, because I don't think he was looking at porno that had kids in it. I think it was more, you know, very young girls. So he's creepy. That's definitely creepy to be an older man and to, you know, predatorily look at young women, young girls. But I don't know. I think there's a subtlety there that might be lost, you know. And I'm not condoning that behavior. Just number one. Just
no.
Cut this up and say, "Oh, Mike Hill condones, you know, pedophilia or whatever." You know?
Mike Hill, pedophile promoter. No, I agree with what you're saying. I don't know the details behind it. What I do know is he didn't go to jail. There's never been anything like that happening since. The case dates back as I understand it, to 2007 or 2008. And it was only really publicized in 2016 because it dragged on for so long. Now again, I have to believe in somebody's capacity to change. I don't think, something that you did when you were younger that's maybe incredibly foolish and stupid necessarily determines who you are today. He's not done, in my view, or actually even really said anything particularly controversial for the better part of a decade. And I enjoy the guy's music. If I stopped listening to everybody's music that I disagreed with, be a very, very short list of bands that I would actually listen to. So
that was caught up in the sort of metal sucks dragnet, right? Was that part of yeah. So that I think they're kind of more obscure.
Might be some more of my bands that are up there later, but who have you got at number 5?
Well, number 5 was My Dying Bride.
Sorry. Yeah, so we're up to number 4 now.
Number 4, and this is probably, I'm sure this is on your list, but and this was higher on my list actually earlier in the year. The Die For Us by Werewolves, released independently, and features you on this record too.
I know. Just a story about that. So Matt got the masters back from the studio, and he sent me the files almost immediately, and he's like, listen to this, I think you're gonna love it. And I'm listening to the first song, and then right at the end of the first song I hear the sample. I'm like, fucking brilliant.
Oh yeah. No, it's great, man. And like, it's I can't believe the volume of material these guys crank out, a volume of quality material. And they're just these, Dave Haley plays in every band in Australia. That's sick. So you got his psychotic drumming, and then you got Matt Wilcock. It's like he's taking steroids in his like right hand or something. You know what I mean? Like his tremolo picking is like beyond anything I've ever really heard, man. I was listening to this record last night driving home from the gym, and I was like, God damn it, this dude must have a grip of iron when you shake his hand. You know what I'm saying? Like,
the craziest thing about him is he is like, I mean, I've had him on the podcast. I speak to him regularly. I consider him a very good friend of mine. He's a generally speaking quite a softly spoken, very humble guy. But you talk about that flow state. I mean, he is the embodiment of the flow state when it comes to death metal. He just churns out so much fucking great stuff, so consistently and seemingly so effortlessly. And it's almost kind of like Matt Pike. It just seems to be, he just picks up a guitar, starts playing, and there's some gnarly, manly, satanic shit that comes out of his hands.
Yeah, I mean, and that, I mean, I fuck around with the guitar, so like for me, it's like, I listen to that and I'm like, damn, that's some next level like writing and playing and execution, really, and and all their songs on, I don't know, all the albums too, but particularly on this one, you got it all sort of. You got like, there's almost like these kind of dissection-esque melodic parts, and then there's some even like some kind of New Jersey like beatdown parts on here too. And then you got like these like kind of mid-tempo like thrash runs in the songs, and sometimes in one song you get all that stuff. Then you got great lyrics. Like the lyrics are like, it's like a brutal album, but it's also fun. You know what I'm trying to say? Like,
no. There's again, Nathan pointed this out. It's like they're winking at you every now and then and going like, this is almost like sit back and watch what we say next, or watch what we're about to do next. Like they make music for people, I think, that grew up in a certain generation. I mean, they basically sing about it in Die For Us. Yeah. And there is definitely that fun element to it. And I praised Matt's playing, but Dave Haley, I've said it many times before, one of the very best of the best. And Sam Bean, also one of the very best of the best. In terms of vocals, I mean, he would be on my shortlist for top 5 death metal vocalist of all time. He's enunciation, he's timing, he's rhythm, everything I love about good death metal vocals, he absolutely nails.
Yeah, totally. And that's like the sickest part of the band is like, a lot of times like you cannot decipher the lyrics, and they're in here, they're fast, they're extreme, and you can make out everything he's saying too, which is awesome, and There's like one of my favorite moments on this record. I think it's in My Hate Is Strong, where he's like, "This one is for the maniacs," and I'm like,
yeah.
I'm like, "Fuck yeah, man!"
Yeah, no, it's as I said, it has kind of, it gives you a knowing wink every so often, but yeah, always like they are so consistent. I cannot wait to hear what they do on album number 6.
Well, you know, every year it's like they put out a record like every 8 months or something like that. So I know that like at least one record in my top 10 will be a Werewolves record from, you know, going forward.
Yeah. All right. Number 4, more controversy. Panzerfaust, Sons of Perdition, Chapter 4 to Shadow Zion. Out on Eisenwald, November the 22nd. I've already spoken a little about this on a recent episode, but the perfect finale to a incredibly ambitious, very, very thoughtful, yet also hard as fuck quadrilogy. And it was so great to be able to have that conversation with Brock and talk about it and sort of get his unfiltered thoughts and things. And, you know, again, to mention, we met the entire band afterwards, just the fucking best dudes. And I'm so pleased to see them doing well. I would also say, if anyone hasn't seen them live yet, they're on another level. The vibe that they create with having Goliath stand behind the stage on a very small riser, because he's a huge man, but you know, on that riser, and he's this big imposing figure. You've got Brock, you know, standing in the front. They, again, you know, as far as musicians that are operating on a you know, very much a next level, all 4 men in that band are absolutely in the zone at the moment, creatively and technically.
Yeah, I mean, this is on my list too. And yeah, I've been you introduced me to them like a few years ago with the beginning of this like series that they were doing of records, and yeah, it's for me the heaviness, and there's like a very primal element to this band which I respond to, where similar to Neurosis and Tribes of Neurot, like back in the day, back in the 90s, when I would experience those bands live, there would be this like very rhythmic kind of primordial like resonance with that band, and that's what I imagine Panzerfaust to be like live. You know what I mean? And but their records are great, and that's the only way I've experienced the band so far.
It's an interesting comparison to Neurosis, because they have a similar quality to Neurosis in at least in my listening experience, in that they're the kind of band that can bludgeon you with something really, really heavy, and when they catch you at just the right moment, they kind of pierce that veil of emotion as well.
Yeah.
In a way that I'm not shy to admit this. You get a bit of a lump in the back of your throat.
No,
I remember
absolutely.
hearing the Promethean Fire for the first time on Chapter 2, Render Unto Eden, and when that clean singing when the woman starts singing at the, you know, midway through the song. I mean, it's a really emotional swell that you experience, similar to Neurosis. I mean, you hear a sun that never sets at the right time, and like I said, it's lump in the throat time. I don't give a fuck how manly you are.
That's exactly, you know, you hit the nail on the head with that. So, so that's my number 3, actually, this record. And, you know, we're similar on this same wavelength.
I was about to say, very much so.
And like I was kind of hinting at it earlier, is that I've been really into like layered elements in music, and the remainder of this list is going to show that, you know, and yeah, and there's a lot of stuff in there, you know what I mean, in this record, in their production and the songwriting. The songs are longer, which I really dig, you know, and there's like, it takes it's not afraid to take its time to develop into something, which is like, so that's like my favorite thing. So yeah, I love it.
And it's also, because of those layers, it's something you're going to be able to go back to. And you will continually discover new things in it. Okay, the controversy continues unabated, because at number 3, Horner, Nyx Hymnasia Yole. Jesus Christ, I love this album. There was a period of time where I was so stuck on listening to this, I couldn't listen to anything else. I think in terms of a band that embodies every single thing that black metal should be about, and really kind of informed my feelings around. I still don't necessarily believe in gatekeeping as such, but I believe in keeping my own powder dry, and the things I surround myself with and listen to needs to be on a certain level. They just they are a complete fucking gob of spit in the face of all these major chord, ecstatic black metal bands and just things that I think is complete garbage.
I agree.
A perfectly executed black metal album. Perfect. Spellgoth's vocals are, again, elite of the elite. The riffing, fucking fantastic. And then they finish it off with this beautiful, haunting acoustic song. I mean, I would go as far as to say this is the best thing they've ever done.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't spend enough time with this record, but I am a fan of Horna. And me and Mike Scandato saw them play like back in like 2006 or something like that. They were on tour in the States, and they played in Bayonne, New Jersey at like a sports bar. And me and Mike drove out there, and with some other people with us. And there was like, I don't know, like 9 bands on the bill, and they went on like super late. And it was, the TV was in the back playing whatever game was on that night, and there was no stage. And they cut the music like right before they went on playing, and it felt like they were taking like forever setting their gear up, which just added this like really sketchy vibe. Because like suddenly, you're in this space, and there's these Guidos there, right? And then there's all these like black metal kids, and there's like a black metal like distro set up where I bought like, I don't know, like $100 worth of records that day too. And then suddenly this smell like wafts in, and we're like, what the I'm like, oh, the band must be getting ready to play. So sure enough, these dudes walk in, they have like their filthy, bloody clothes on, and just crushed. And there was no stage. So he was, I forgot, I'm not sure which vocalist it was, but he had the gauntlet on. He was like smashing people in the face with his gauntlet. And like at the end of the night, like he was drinking out of just a straight vodka, like out of a bottle. And the way the set ended, it wasn't with some, incredible ending song. It's like the lights went on. Some dude came up to the stage, took the bottle out of his hand, and like led him away. And that was how the set ended. So it was like by far the most memorable show I've ever seen. So good.
That was Corvus that would have been in the band at that point. The thing that I was blown away by is when Spellgoth said in the interview when I had him on the podcast that he basically doesn't write lyrics or practice anything. He just goes on stage and he just says he just sings whatever he wants to sing. But I mean, again, his vocals on this album, to me, they're so fucking powerful because they're so pissed off and aggressive. Like him and Wrath, aka Afgrun's Prophet. I mean, they are, to me right now, when it comes to black metal, I mean, they really lead the charge on, in my view, what black metal vocaling should sound like.
Yeah, they're a great band, definitely. I got to spend more time with this record for sure.
It's brilliant. Okay, number 2 for you.
House of the Black Geminis by Akhlys. Once again on Debum Amorti Productions. A great. Eisenwald too is another great label too, by the way. I check out all the stuff that comes out on those two, and it's the same deal, man. Like I've grown to really construct a bridge between Akhlys and Panzerfaust. Like I think, at least like maybe on a spiritual level, there's a connection between those two bands, and and I like Nas's, when you have him on the podcast, like his exploration of like occult philosophy and stuff like that, I find very interesting. And the music is definitely connecting to some kind of broader darkness, which I as a result of starting to listen to them, I a few years ago, I've kind of become a huge fan of theirs, actually. And once again, a band I'm looking forward to seeing live one day.
Once again, I'm going to be breaking my duck on seeing Akhlys live at Fortress. They'll be there also. Hopefully, I'll get to spend some time with Nas in person and record an episode for the podcast. But I agree with you on the parallels between Panzerfaust and Akhlys. I jokingly said to Brock, like, if you really want people's brains to melt, go on tour with Akhlys. Get Horner to play with you guys as well.
I really can't believe there's any sort of like controversy with these bands, honestly, man. Like, I mean,
well, the thing with Nas was the Julius Evola sample that they used for Nightbringer. But my argument about that is, you want to honestly tell me that using a Julius Evola sample is this terrible thing when people are using fucking Charles Manson samples and serial killer samples and stuff like that? I know him. I think he's a good dude. If Cole's friends with him, so is Cheyenne. I back the dude. He is a very thoughtful guy. He's very intelligent. He's extremely well spoken, and it also translates to him as an artist. The work he does with Akhlys is, I mean, it's real next level stuff. Yeah, House of the Black Geminis. You have such a tall order, topping an album like Melano, which again in 2020, in my view, it set the fucking standard for what black metal should sound like. Mm-hmm. Then, you come back with this album that is even more densely layered, even more aggressive, but yet also even more atmospheric and even more sort of absorbing. And I know the Outlaw Scandado didn't enjoy it when we listened to the first song, but
that's not my jam, definitely.
No, but I think that build up at the beginning of the record, the way, it takes a long time for it to kind of finally go, but it's kind of like, like you were talking about that anticipation when you're at a great live show, and it's like, you're waiting for it, it's coming, but you're waiting for it to happen. House of the Black Geminis achieves that as well, in that it has that build up in the actual song, and when it finally fucking explodes, it's just, I had goosebumps the first time I heard it. I was like, holy Jesus, he's actually pulled it off. He's done something that's going to be, by first impressions, better than Melano.
Yeah, I mean, and that's my feeling about it too. I mean, I like things that sort of develop and take their time, and sort of, there's climaxes, there's dynamics in the songs and things like that, and and just the playing on this record too, I think is great too. I mean, there's a lot of really cool, like very, very fast tempos and that sort of thing. Yet it still has this, kind of like depressive quality to it, and it's just a great record by a great band, and like I said, I look forward to seeing them play one time.
Depressive quality, but I would also say, and so Horner has this in common with them, as does Panzerfaust, as does all great black metal. For me, one of the things that define a superb black metal record, it must also have that feeling of empowerment. Like, I need to feel like I want to. I need to feel. I'm trying to find the right words here, because saying I want to feel like I want to, smash shit to pieces. You can say that about a lot of different stuff, but I want to feel like I want to rip life's throat out when I listen to a great black metal record. I want to feel that fire in the belly that you just got, like, fuck yes, no matter how shit your day has been. How pissed off you are with things happening in the outside world, whatever the case may be. When you hear a great black metal record, you should feel like you are part of a small club that is, and you want to wrestle everything that you possibly can out of life. Definitely, there's an empowering element to great black metal, in my opinion.
I agree with that. Definitely,
yeah. All right, my number 2 is Werewolves Die For Us. We have discussed that at length, which brings us to your number 1.
This is a bit of a shocker to me, that this record is my number 1, because right up until yesterday, I was juggling this list around, but I listened to this record constantly, and it's By the Shadows, Trelldom, my number 1 record. And
what?
Dude, I am dead serious. I cannot deny that this is my number 1 record this past year. And it's like, it has everything on this record that I want in an album, and I was like, man, I was thinking about how much I listened to it, like how much I keep going back to this record, and what I mean, I don't know if anyone else likes this album, but I fucking love it. And you know, Gall is like the top, you know, tier vocalist, and there's just like this cosmic darkness to this record. It's a more progressive version of Galsveerd in some ways, you know, and you know, there's like all these instruments on there, and it's like it's more in common with like Swans or like Godspeed You Black Emperor or something like that. And I know it's a shocking, but and I didn't do this just to be like, oh, look how interesting I am by putting Trolldom on as number one.
Look
like,
how avant-garde I can be.
No, I know that I probably come off as sounding like a real douchebag by putting this as my number one, but this is what I feel. You know, I love this album, man.
No, I don't think that at all. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking now I need to go back and listen to it because, you know, it is storied how much I disliked it when I first heard it. But that is also, and here's an interesting question it raises. I was such a big fan of Till Minna, the previous Trolldom record. I was hoping to hear something similar. Now I'm wondering, and this is the question, if they had released this album and called it Galsveerd, how would it have been received?
Because I know I was shocked when I put it on the first time back. Yeah. What came out, like September or something like that in the fall.
Yeah.
And I was, because I expected it to sound like the other Trolldom material, which it doesn't at all.
No.
And at first I rejected it, probably like you did. And then but it was one of those things where you don't know if you like it or not, but then the following week I'm like, I don't know, there's something about that record, and like I kept going back to it, and I would listen to it like on longer like I would take long drives if I had to go somewhere, like I had to travel up to Massachusetts a few times, take a couple of flights this year, and I would listen to it, you know, in those contexts, and it started gelling with me. And then I started getting it. I'm like, oh, this is actually more like Galsveerd, but like a little bit more progressive. Like there's more, kind of like clever guitar playing on it and things like that. Rhythms are a little bit, you know, more progressive. And dude, it's, forget that it's a Trolldom record and listen to it and just think of it as a Gall solo album or something like that. Yeah. And then it might make a little bit more sense. But I kept I was shuffling this record. This was not always, but towards the end of last year, this was in my top 10. But especially in the last like month or two, maybe the onset of the winter, maybe go back and really dial into this album, man. So yeah, I don't know. You know,
it's great when that happens, though. It's great when you have that. You know, when an album's a grower like that. You know, some of the best albums ever. You know, across all genres, for me, have been albums that at first I heard and I was like, this is fucking shit, and move on. And then this is something that keeps pulling you back to it.
Yeah, you know, and like I said, I'm not trying to be like, oh, you know, I'm going to look how interesting I am. What a fascinating guy. You know, no, that's not at all. I love what I like.
That would have been if you brought Sleep Token into the mix.
I don't even know who that is. I don't even know what they sound like. I just know that you guys think they suck, and like, you know, it sounds like something I would not be into.
They sound like the itching anus of a Hot Topic sales clerk.
That's about the, you know, what I picked up what it was like. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the shock of your revelation probably takes the wind out of my number one, because I didn't say it at the time, but Akhlys, House of the Black Geminis, I'm pretty confident almost anyone by the time we got to about number 5 could have guessed it was going to be that. But there are, and I would say that in the top 4, any of those could have been number 1. I went back and forth on them. The one I kept landing on was Akhlys. So well done to them. In a absolutely incredible year, they put out, in my view, the best album of the year. One quick thing. Sorry, you were going to say?
Well, I was going to say those. It's like my 2, 3, and 4, Akhlys, Panzerfaust, and Werewolves, were all of those were my number 1 at one point this year.
Yeah,
and then like that. If there was like a long distance marathon, like a run, and like there was the guy who was at the end, and then he overtook everyone. That's the Trolldom record.
Yeah. About to say he's the dude that's like, he's jogging along at the beginning. They're like, they don't even, the commentator isn't even talking about him, and then the next thing you know, in that final bend, here he comes running. Just one quick thing I want to mention before we wrap up. My favorite EPs. I'm just going to mention two. I'm not going to go down a big list, but two EPs I want to highlight because in my criteria, obviously, I do not include EPs and I do not include re-recordings, hence no Cavalera Conspiracy. But my favorite two EPs of the year, the Lichtern Engang's Hammer split. I premiered that on the podcast. Fucking just absolute A-grade Norwegian black metal, featuring, of course, my very good friend, the great Swartalv on bass, and then another EP featuring a very good friend, Drugoth, We Are Legion, the split EP that he did with Shograth. That is fucking manly black metal.
Oh yeah,
black metal how it should sound. And I know that it was written with this intention. Black metal that kind of celebrates the movement that is the cultural movement that is the Horseman of the podcasting apocalypse.
Yeah, those are great. The split with the Drugoth, material is awesome, and he and I have become pretty good friends actually as a result of the podcast, and he's been on Everything Went Black a few times. And I had a couple of mentions just real quick. I had like that. You have True Black Dawn in the top 30. That's a great record. Carl turned me on to that. The Insect Arc record, Raw Blood Singing, which is once again on Debu Morti. It's, if you've listened to the other material, it's like instrumental, but this record has vocals, and it's really a different sort of vibe for that band. And Panzerchrist, All Witches Shall Burn, great stuff.
A definite contender, just didn't make it on. It was actually on the list probably up to about January the 10th. And it was, I would say I struggled the most with 30 through to 21 because you kind of get to that point now with what's going to be in and what's not going to be in. But if it were a top 40, top 50, Panzerchrist is absolutely there. They're really a band that's come into their own. They were sort of a nothing band to me until the previous record came out. And then this new one hit me by surprise. Really, really good as well. One I would definitely say you should check out as well, because I know you'll like it. I know your taste. Monte Penumbra, Austere Dawning.
Okay.
If you like True Black Dawn, similar sort of vibe, really hard hitting, fucking mean black metal, the way black metal should sound.
Check that out.
So we definitely need to. There's two things we have to do this year. We must do the True Detective season 2 discussion.
Yes.
And we also have to do the Thrash crossover breakdown. I spoke to the Outlaw about it the other day. And I know he's down with it too. And we have to do it while I can sort of decide on 6, because I didn't realize when we first came up with the idea how fucking difficult it was going to be to get down to 6. But
dude,
it has sent me down a road of exploration, which is possibly why at the end of the podcasts, I continually include songs by Slaughter and Demolition Hammer and stuff like that. Just because like every time I'm like, okay, I've got 6. Then I'm like, oh, fuck, but what about this band? Let's go through their catalog. And you realize, Jesus, there's fucking gold there.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah, it's going to be hard to come up with 6. I mean, I started, I got some notes. I've been chipping away at putting together a list, and it's difficult to just have only 6, man. Yeah.
And then, True Detective, I will rewatch that once I'm done with my annual cycle of Boardwalk Empire. I am a Boardwalk Empire for me is every time I watch it, it inches closer and closer to The Sopranos in my favorite TV shows of all time list.
Yeah, I mean it's fantastic, and the HBO world, HBO universe or whatever. When it comes to shows, they're like the Debu Morti of like TV in some ways. Like I'll at least check out everything that they at least put together as a show. But yeah, Sopranos is still the reigning kings of that world, really, for me.
Oh, always will be. It's been slim pickings, I think, with HBO for a while now, with the exception of Righteous Gemstones. The golden age where it was The Wire, The Sopranos, Boardwalk. That seems to be done. Actually, even the first 2 seasons of Westworld, I really, really enjoyed.
Yeah.
I mean, third season, they completely fucking savaged that show, destroyed it spectacularly. But I feel like I haven't started watching Landman yet. I know Mike is really, really high on that and said I need to watch it. But so that's on the list as well. And Severance has got season 2 out. I'm really excited to start with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I caught the first episode, and it's exactly the kind of thing I like. So I'm a mark for that show, really.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And then musically from you, we've got Tombs this year. We've got potentially Scorpion Throne, Begotten Sons.
There's the Scorpion Throne. There's 4 songs written right now. So I've been sharing that with the other 2 guys, and the riffs are done, but I need to write lyrics for it. And then I started working on a couple of ideas for Begotten Sons. And the drummer Brian is actually moving down to New Jersey. So we're going to be closer in proximity and probably just rehearse at our space that we have here. And, because he was living in Providence, Rhode Island for a long time. And we were meeting in Boston. And, so it was just kind of like not as convenient. But yeah, I'm excited about the Scorpion Throne stuff. It's different. As they say in Thailand, same, but different. You know what I mean? It's definitely the same type of feel as the first EP, but it's a little bit different, more, a little bit more, I hate to say upbeat, but more, not as depressing maybe as the first EP, a little bit more of a glimmer of not so black despair, I guess,
Well, again, there was something that I thought was quite empowering about that EP as well. I loved it. I said it to you at the time. I thought it was fantastic. But very much, very, very much looking forward to that. And then the final thing, hopefully this year, because we've known each other now this is year 6. We can't fucking hit a decade without having met each other face to face. So I'm hoping at some point this year I'm going to be in the US. If I am and I'm anywhere near you, hopefully we can finally meet in person.
Well, I mean, if all goes well for the release of the album this year, we'll be in Europe at least for for a brief run. I mean, we're not going to be doing like a 40-day tour like we used to do, but we'll be there for some period of time.
Well, get Horner and Akhlys along for the ride on that one, and you can melt the internet with that with that tour. All right, dude. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to catch up.
Absolutely
with you.
A pleasure. Absolutely.
Yeah, I like that we've made this a tradition. We'll definitely do. If you're up for it, same time, same place next year.
And real quick about anyone who does their year end best before the end of the year, it's irresponsible. So there you go.
Yeah, dude, I agree. I mean, I would go as far as to say I've become really staunch in my view on this. But, if you're a metal YouTube channel or a metal podcast and the word monetization leaves your mouth in any other way than either mocking or mockery or irony, fuck off. You're not part of any scene I'm part of. You're not part of my circle. You're not somebody I'm going to be friends with. We just don't do the same thing. I do this because I love it. And if I'm going to do a list, I'm going to take it seriously. Otherwise, I just won't do it. So yeah, that's my view on it.
All right, brother. Thanks for having me on.
Man.
Much appreciated.
Take care of yourself. Akhlys with Maze of Phobator off the fantastic album House of the Black Geminus. Unquestionably the best album of 2024, according to yours truly. Congratulations to them. Congratulations to every band that featured on my top 30 and on the top 10s of all of my guests. I want to say a big thank you to Mike Hill, to the Reverend Carl Ikara, to the Duke of Metal, Dave Berardi, and to Nathan Glover for joining me once again this year for this 3-part epic. I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I know that it's a little late, but as far as I'm concerned, the Oscars, the Emmys, mostly award shows I don't care about, but they do their awards around about this time of the year. You know, I may not do it in November like some, but one thing that I can assure you, and I think you folks would be surprised by how many shenanigans take place in the music industry. One thing you can be guaranteed with when it comes to Into the Necrosphere is that these were albums that we actually spent time listening to, stack ranking, discussing, debating. Everything that I tell you as far as my opinion on a record is 100% legit, how I feel at the time. There were no press junkets or free flights or promises of access to a particular band or any sort of fucking influence peddling going on to get me to think a certain way. I genuinely believe these bands are the best of the best. And yes, some of them include some of my friends. I think if anybody were to speak to any of my friends, you probably will find out very quickly that I'm harsher on my friends than I am on anybody else, specifically because, especially when it comes to this podcast, I don't want to be seen as biased. And again, in many instances, if I take Werewolves as an example, I became friends with those guys because I enjoyed their music. You know, that's kind of how the conversation got started. It wasn't that we were, you know, friends from school days and they started a band, and even though it was some half-baked fucking nonsense, I told them, that's incredible, well done, keep it up. I'd never do something like that, not to the Legion. But my friends, on that note, I would like to say, if you cheer along like a fucking simpleton whenever a festival cancels a awesome band like Horner or Akhlys or Impaled Nazarene from their lineup, then you probably don't listen to this podcast. But if you do, right now it's time to pack up and hit the bricks, because this is my weekly news rant.
A roundabout for judgment. And hang them where the world can see.
All right, friends, we kick off on metalstorm.net, as always, the finest metal news website in all the land. There is a new Arch Enemy single, but after the continued disappointment of their first single, I would say we will give Paper Tiger, the name of the new song, a wide berth. Spirit Box also has a new single. I saw there was a ton of... I mean, I don't know whether it was supposed to be funny or people were, you know, taking it as a quote-unquote comedy moment, but I think the singer for Spirit Box was mistaken for some loser named Poppy at the Grammys. I still am baffled as to why anybody that listens to metal or professes to be into this music would pay any attention to any of the award shows. The Grammys, the AMAs, the MTV Music Awards, all of that stuff is complete and utter fucking mainstream dog shit. Nothing that any of us should pay any attention to, and yet, you know, millions of people outraged about the fact that Paul Di'Anno wasn't on the In Memoriam video. There were people that were sobbing about the fact that apparently they were playing Metallica when Gojira went up and got their award. Gojira sucks, and who gives a fuck what they played in the background? There was also some people bleating about the fact that metal wasn't shown as part of the television, the telecast. So again, are you telling me that you will sit and watch an entire 4-hour ordeal? You would endure that ordeal for 4 hours. All of the mainstream garbage, the virtue signaling, the champagne communism that a lot of the celebrity types endorse. You would endure all of that just to see 2 seconds of a band walking up on stage and accepting an award. If you do that, you have way too much time on your hands, and we probably aren't friends and never would be able to be. But anyway, Rivers of Nihil, another band who really have a long-running track record of disappointing me, they've also got a new single out. It says here, just 2 days after announcing the details of their upcoming self-titled 5th studio album, Rivers of Nihil, the band released a music video for their new song, House of Light. You can watch the clip below. First Rivers of Nihil album, like I've mentioned before, great. Second one started to show the cracks. With the introduction of saxophone into their music, their appeal waned very much in line with the level of testosterone, convincing testosterone in their music. So, yeah, I don't hold out hope for this to any great degree. There's also been a couple of the usual suspects from the usual websites and podcasts and YouTube channels that have been declaring this album of the year 2025 all over the socials. We are now on the 7th of February. So if you're ready to call it, why don't you put your list out now so you can get it, so you can get the clicks, if that's what you're in this for. I highly doubt this would make my top 30 based on my expectations of this band, but stranger things have happened. Let's find out what this sounds like. Album of the year, my ass. This is music for men who wear sandals in public. I mean, if I had to pull out the positives, the video is reasonably well produced. There was a hint that we might see somebody running half naked on the beach, an old out-of-shape man scrambling around on the sea sand in his underpants, as we regularly saw in 2023. But fortunately we were spared that. Who knows, maybe it comes later in the music video. The song's production, the recording quality is not bad. I'd say the guitar sound in particular I think is nice and heavy, nice and sludgy, but it doesn't help. There's nothing that can salvage the lack of imagination in the song. The fact that the saxophone sounds diabolical and really is it ensures a complete write-off of the beginning of that song. When it gets a little heavier, it doesn't really convince me whatsoever. And then when you get to this part where I like experimentation, I like clean singing when it's deployed correctly. But when you have these moments where guys in bands seemingly are just doing things to show how sensitive they can be. Just because I rock doesn't mean I'm made of stone. Those kind of moments. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. I hate it. I cannot stand it. I have never been able to stand it. And I can't listen to bands that sound like that. So I think Rivers of Nihil, they probably hit the old blacklist as well. There's just no point in checking out their music anymore. They've had a couple of records to, show me that they can pull things back. into line. I don't think they will ever be able to do that, so I'm done with them. And anyone who says that is the album of the year for 2025, if you were listening to this, unsubscribe, go away. So, all right, next up, we've got Benediction. They've released a new music video for the song Engines of War. British death metal band Benediction has unveiled their latest single, Engines of War, from their forthcoming 9th studio album, Ravage of Empires, set to be released on April the 4th via Nuclear Blast Records. It's been a hot minute since we've heard anything by these guys. Although, actually, no, I take that back. They put out Scriptures, I think, which was the name of their last album, in 2020. Not particularly good, I felt. 82% I noticed is its average review on Metal Archives, but it wasn't a record I really liked. I did like Killing Music that came out prior to that very much. And another Benediction album that I really enjoy is The Dreams You Dread that they put out in 1995. In particular, the first song on that album. I might play you guys a little clip by that in a bit. The song is called Down on Whores, Leave Them All for Dead. I would assume in 2025 this is not a song that they play live very much anymore. I mean, even though Cannibal Corpse and a whole host of other bands sing about similar topics, I can't see them necessarily playing this song live. I might verify that whilst we listen to Engines of War, but all things aside, let's hear what the new song sounds like, and then I might give you guys a little whiff of some vintage, some prime Benediction. That's actually pleasantly surprising, I have to say. The first thing that's standing out to me about that song that I'm enjoying, I think Dave Ingram sounds a lot better on this track than he sounded to my recollection on Scriptures. I think the riff, I mean, it's not anything we haven't heard before, but you can't exactly use that as the measuring stick for everything that you listen to. But the riff is fun. It's groovy. Music video is very old school. The whole vibe of the song is very old school. I mean, they kind of do give away, to a point, how long they've been at the game, how long they've been in the game. I mean, their first album was Subconscious Terror, came out in 1990. I remember seeing, so they had, but if memory serves me correctly, it was 2 videos on Death Is Just the Beginning 3, both of which might have come off of Transcend the Rubicon. But yeah, they've been around for a very long time. And as I said, I think this is actually a pretty decent song. It's not something that, will I give it a top-notch award? I don't think so. But I think it might merit a thumbs up. Production's pretty decent. Really, there's nothing to fault from this. Benediction would have never been, in my view, a tier 1 death metal band. So, you also kind of have to measure them accordingly, with one exception. And I did mention that I was going to play you guys a bit of something. So hang fire while I cue it up. So I mentioned The Dreams You Dread from 1995, and this was something that I was really surprised by. I remember when it came out, and it's a song that's, I wouldn't call it a guilty pleasure because there's very few things I feel guilty about. Maybe my return listens to Nasty As They Want to Be by Two Live Crew, but I mean, if I felt guilty about it, I wouldn't exactly be admitting it to the public. But yeah, there was just something about this song that just hit me in the right way when it came out, and it's just super, super catchy. If you haven't heard it yet, you're going to find out what I mean in a second. People that know Benediction and that have followed their career, they know exactly what I'm talking about. One of the Legion was actually shared a photo the other day on his Instagram with a couple of different Benediction CDs in his hand, and I was like, Down on Whores is hard, and he knew what I was talking about. So this is what it sounds like, friends. I mean, you know, between on the music video, the faces that Dave Ingram is pulling, the fact that it is so obviously from the mid-90s. Again, I know if this is maybe the first time you're hearing this, you're probably not as impressed as I am, but I fucking love it. I really, really enjoy it. And I would strongly suggest you check it out. I was correct, by the way. They do not play this live anymore. At least not, certainly not for the last year or two. They haven't been playing it live. But anyways, so thumbs up for the new Benediction single. I'm very surprised. Looking forward to hearing what the rest of that sounds like. Let's do one more song and then let's go to some questions. Grob, I'm assuming is how you pronounce this. Bavarian black metal duo Grob unveils the visualizer Vom Grob im Moos about the grave in the moor. It's the final advanced single taken from their forthcoming new album Kremes, due out on February the 21st. Let's give it a listen. Like that very much. Interestingly, I didn't know this band at all, and I was checking out who's in the band. So Grant, I don't know how to pronounce it, but let's assume it's Grant, the vocalist. He is ex-Dark Fortress. And then you've also got Gnust, better known as Dan Cap of Winterfilleth, or formerly of Winterfilleth. And you can definitely hear influences of both bands in this. Works really, really well as far as I'm concerned. Dark Fortress, when they were at their peak, which in my opinion was on an album called Ilem, it's a fucking incredible record. Really, really, really good. So, yeah, I like this very much. Very excited to hear what the rest of this sounds like. I do feel like it's kind of been a little quiet to get the year started. I mean, I know last year, I don't think January was, really stuffed with great stuff. Obviously, there was Inquisition. There's one or two other things, but there's not really been anything that has that's blown me away. I was excited to hear Patriarch, listen to it. It's all right. What else has there been? I mean, I have been keeping up with my list, but like Seward, this came out this weekend. I need to check that out fully. What I've heard so far, I quite liked. Barshaketh, that's really good. And then I did save the Mutagenic Host album, but I haven't actually properly listened to that. The song I did hear, I really liked. It's called The Diseased Machine, but I still need to pay some attention to it. I have heard one album, however, that I'm not going to call the album of 2025. That's for, the beginning of next year. But I'm going to say now it's going to impress a lot of people. I'll debate whether I share who that's by as we progress as we progress through this week's news rant. But I will say it's very, very good. Okay, let's check out some questions. I didn't get to all the questions last week, so I just want to make sure that I don't miss any of you guys off. Let's have a quick scan of what we've got. There was one I remember from a few weeks ago that was quite funny. Frozen Swoll's response: have you done a rant yet about Nevermore reuniting without Warrel or Jim Shepard? Yes, twice, and it's fucking it's an abomination. Ed Brunsden _3 asks, what's the most true cult thing you've ever done? If you think, burning churches and stuff like that is true cult, no, I've not done any of that. I've not really done very much that's cult, in all honesty. I've always seen black metal as being very much about self-empowerment. Extreme music generally to me is about self-empowerment, and I've always had respect for people that succeed on their own terms. And I've always tried my very best to succeed in life on my own terms. I've done reasonably well for myself professionally. I've done well with this podcast, at least as well as better than I intended to. I'm no, Nick Nocturnal or anybody like that, but I've done well with the podcast versus what I thought I was going to do. I thought, okay, 100 subscribers, and I think we're locked in. So that's exceeded my expectations. And generally speaking in life, I've not really ever compromised on who I am, and at work everybody knows Jackie is not necessarily Mr. Corporate Bootlicker. They all know about the podcast. They all find that quite amusing and funny. I've never really turned the volume down on my personality at all. I know when to deploy certain elements of my personality. I'm not a fucking idiot that, when I meet the CEO, the first thing that I say is, hey, have you ever heard of this band, Impaled Nazarene? They're fucking brilliant. But, yeah, I mean, if you take that as the definition for truly being cult, living life on your own terms, then I have done my very best to always live life completely and utterly on my own terms. And the people that I'm closest to, all of my best friends, they've all done exactly the same. Cheyenne is a good example of that. Cheyenne is he's his own man without a shadow of a doubt. He has done really, really well with his band. He's doing really well with his training business, his training consultancy. And there's no compromise to him as a human being which I really like. And I he's the sort of dude that I really do. I'm rooting for him to do really, really well, regardless of whether he's my friend or not. One thing I wanted to talk about very quickly before we move on, we obviously had mentioned previously that Akhlys is the winners of the prestigious #1 album of 2024 on Into the Necrosphere. Some would argue the only Album of the Year award that truly matters. But with the sweet must come the sour, Soulcrusher Festival announced by way of comment on their Instagram page, Akhlys is no longer part of the Soulcrusher 2025 lineup. We don't tolerate nor agree on any form of bigotry, racism, and intolerance. Needless to say, we should have done our research better. Onwards to a killer edition of Soulcrusher. 71 likes and a deluge of the usual fucking idiots, people that have Palestinian flags, boast about their veganism, how they've got ADHD, and various other tropes and iconography. Follow me on Blue Sky in their Instagram page. They were all hailing this as the best, decision possible. Finally, they can feel safe. Not that they probably would have been able to afford the tickets to see Soulcrusher, but that's besides the point. But yeah, I thought this was, yet another pathetic display of so-called rebellious metal culture taking a stand against a band based on accusations and hearsay that has been refuted many, many times. There's still people that talk about how Nas hasn't directly denied that he's, that he's a Nazi. Denied it pretty directly on Cheyenne's podcast just a couple of months ago. And the thing about it is, Akhlys have never said anything political. There's nothing at all political in any of their music. Nobody of any race, sexual orientation, or religion has ever been threatened, attacked, bullied. No one has even had a fucking microaggression directed at them as a result of somebody being an Akhlys fan or listening to an Akhlys song. So I'm not really sure what Soulcrusher have achieved here, aside from basically taking the opportunity away from people who might have gone to Soulcrusher to see Akhlys play to watch the band live. Again, as I said, most of these people that are cheering the decision are welfare recipients who couldn't afford a ticket in any case. So, I just think it's completely and utterly pathetic. And from my perspective, zero respect, zero support, like zero tolerance for Soulcrusher. I would never, ever go to that festival now. I don't give a fuck who's on the bill. And I increasingly am feeling like I'm going to get to a point where I'm going to start putting a moratorium on bands that appear on some of these festivals as well. Certainly, if I see another band cheering the cancellation of somebody, I don't care if they were cheering the cancellation of Grand Belial's Key. I'm done. I will never have them on the podcast again because our values don't align. I'm certainly not, into any sort of Nazism, any sort of far right stuff. You guys know my view on that. Vehemently against it. But I come from the school, as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago on the Unholy Podcast Trio episode, I come from the school of freedom of speech. If you don't like it, no one's obligating you to watch it. And again, as I said, I just think this is completely and utterly pathetic. My strong advice, and I know there are people in bands that listen to this podcast, so if you are in a band and you're listening to this, my advice to you would be, put a clause in your contract that specifically states that if you are pulled from a set for whatever reason, for any reason other than death or jail, that on a sliding scale, you will receive an increasing percentage of your show fee. So say, for example, you sign the contract 8 months before the festival date. You then say, okay, if we get cancelled, if we get pulled from the bill, 5 months before showtime, you pay us 25% of our fee. If we get pulled 3 months before the show, 50%. And anything 3 months and above, we get 90% of our fee. And I think bands that are of a certain stature, Like a band like Akhlys could easily do this. They are enough of a draw. They're popular enough that they could easily put that term down, and then they are going to be able to test very, very quickly whether a promoter is serious about hosting them or not. And I can think of several other bands as well. Horner, Cloak, just bands that are kind of coming to mind. Sargeist. I would, if I were in charge of those guys' business affairs, I would straight away put that in, and I would not compromise on it. If a promoter doesn't want to agree to have you on a festival based on that clause in the contract, if that's a red line, I'll just say, okay, no problem, we'll find something else. Because at the very least, this way that you can book as a band, you can book yourself onto another festival where the promoter is serious about having you on. They're not going to buckle, and your time's not going to be wasted. Because in this instance, I'm pretty confident Akhlys could have booked another festival for that weekend or for around that time. Now they're not able to, potentially, because they've had their time wasted by a guy who's a fucking idiot and who's being cheered on by a bunch of other idiots. And I think the only way that we put a stop to this is if bands start to push back the way that I've just said, and if fans start to vote with their wallets. Stop going to festivals that do this sort of thing. There are a ton of brilliant festivals that don't have any of this bullshit, any of this baggage. It could be Beyond the Gates, it could be Inferno, it could be Fortress, let's be honest, it could also be Steelfest. There's a ton of festivals in the US that don't do this sort of thing either. And I'm pretty sure you're going to find whoever goes to those festivals to be some of the friendliest, most inclusive people around. And if anyone, frankly, if anyone has evidence to the contrary, if they've been to, if you're a minority and you've been to a show and Akhlys was playing at the show and, you had people that were pushing you around, bullying you, firstly, it's despicable if that happened. Secondly, I'd love to know, because I've yet to see anything like that evidenced. It's the same as we were talking about myself, Jerry, and Cheyenne with Impaled Nazarene. I've not heard of a single homophobic attack at an Impaled Nazarene show, because I would expect that the vast majority of people that listen to Impaled Nazarene, unless they're congenitally insane and scum to begin with, whether or not they listen to Impaled Nazarene, pretty sure they'd just be decent to most people. But yeah, just thought I would mention that in light of the fact that Akhlys has been crowned the elite of the elite for 2024 here on Into the Necrosphere. Let's go on to some more music. Night have launched a new single. Night have debuted Cult of the Serpent Sun, the second single and the title track off their oncoming studio record. The latter officially drops on March the 14th on Season of Mist. Let's hear what it sounds like. definitely a song that ticks the boxes. It is super catchy. It is well performed, well recorded. I have always been a fan of Vangelis Labrakis's vocals. I actually really wanted to get somebody from Night on the podcast when they released their previous album, Voices of the Cronian Moon. That's a record I loved. And I think I'm going to have to make sure that I do get somebody on once Cult of the Serpent Sun is released. Normally, I can take or leave blackened heavy metal. Sometimes I kind of feel like they lean a little too much towards the latter. I think Midnight have done it probably amongst the best. I mean, even though they're quite a popular band, they've been amongst some of the best to do it, I think. But I've always thought that Night is great. I love that previous record, and this sounds like it has a ton of potential. So I think I'm going to give that one a top notch, my friends. I think it's deserving of one. So well done to them. And yeah, like I said, I'm going to try and get somebody from the band in. Van's vocals, man, sounds just fucking brilliant. It's kind of the it's partly the performance and partly the way that it's mixed. It's like this ominous being that's looming over the music, and I just think it really works well. Right, let's check out what else we've got to talk about. Black Sabbath original lineup to play one final show. Naturally, a load of excitement and hype on really every social channel about this. It says here, British heavy metal legends Black Sabbath, featuring the original lineup of Ozzy Osbourne, Tony Iommi, Geezer Butler, and Bill Ward, will reunite for the first time in 20 years to play together on July the 5th, 2025 at Villa Park in Birmingham, England for one final show. The event, dubbed Back to the Beginning, will also include performances by Ozzy Osbourne, Metallica, Slayer, Pantera, Gojira, Hailstorm, Alice in Chains, Lamb of God, Anthrax, and Mastodon. The event will also feature several guest appearances by Billy Corgan, Fred Durst, Jonathan Davis, Papa V from Ghost, Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine, and more. I would assume Tom Morello will set sail about 3 weeks or so in advance of the show, because naturally he would want to keep his carbon footprint down. Ozzy Osbourne commented, "It's my time to go back to the beginning, time for me to give back to the place where I was born. How blessed I am to do it with the help of people who I love. Birmingham is the true home of metal, Birmingham forever. Black Sabbath was formed in Birmingham in 1968. All profits from the night will go to the following charities: Cure Parkinson's, Birmingham Children's Hospital, Acorn Children's Hospice, a children's hospice supported by Aston Villa." Good cause. Will I be attending this? I have already been asked on the old DMs by a couple of people. The answer to that question, my friends, unsurprisingly, is no. So I like Black Sabbath. I will confess to being more partial to Dio era Black Sabbath than I am to Ozzy Osbourne Black Sabbath. But also the price of these tickets are obscene. I think if you wanted to be in the golden circle, when I last checked, it's £395. And I understand that it's a real momentous occasion. I mean, this is going to be something that, you'd be able to tell your kids about this story one day. But then, that being said, I would say maybe somebody who's going to appreciate it more should go in my place, and ideally pay for the ticket. I'm not paying that amount of money, especially not when we've got fucking Sleep Token, and Tom Morello and other dweebs on the lineup. What would have been really cool, is if they, instead of having really well-established bands, it would have been really cool if they had, maybe you have Metallica, Slayer, and Pantera, and then instead of all the others, have like bands that are new and interesting. Like if you really want to give back to the scene by breaking a couple of bands that that would absolutely kill for this opportunity. Get Night onto that lineup. Get Spirit World onto the lineup. Get bands on that can kind of carry the torch for hopefully decades more to come. I do think that, I've spoken about it before, but this sort of very insular scene at the top of the metal food chain, or at least the metal's kind of commercial ladder, I don't think is healthy for the scene at all. I think it's, as a matter of fact, I think it's going to, I wouldn't say it's going to be the scene and the genre's undoing, because the underground will always exist. But I think from a business perspective, at the very like upper echelons where, you know, bands would play things like Donington, maybe Bloodstock, although I'll say Bloodstock are pretty good at giving, you know, bands that aren't as big an opportunity to headline. But those kind of, you know, Metallica level bands, of which there's very, very few, those bands are not doing enough to elevate the next generation. And when they're done, I think we're going to see quite a paradigm shift in the music business overall. Gallower have put out a new song. It says here, Polish-based Blackened Thrashers Gallower have shared a brand new single, the title track off their forthcoming second full-length effort, Vengeance and Wrath, that comes out on March the 28th, 2025 via Dying Victims Productions. Let's hear what it sounds like. I sure hope for their sake that the rest of the album is better than the polished turd that was that song. I always get super excited whenever I see Black and Thrash, because when it's executed properly, it's one of my favorite styles. Destroyer 666, Dahiva, bands like that. But I do find myself more often than not being reasonably disappointed. I still contend, in the last decade at least, the album Through Sheer Will and Black Magic by Daeva, spelt, in case you want to look it up on Bandcamp, Daeva, out on $20 spin back in 2022. That is the best example of the genre that I know of for at least the last decade. There's not been anything since that has been anywhere near as impressive, and certainly before that, maybe the album that can compare was, there's a Destroyer 666 album that had a song on it called Blood for Blood. I'd say that would have been probably the closest. Defiance, the Destroyer 666 album. That would be the one, like the Black and Thrash record, that would be closest to, in terms of quality, that Daeva record. As a matter of fact, let me give me a few seconds, and I'll queue up a Daeva song just to play to you guys, in case you've only recently discovered this podcast, and heretofore you've had to listen to Mole Alderslade go on about how wonderful the new Opeth album is. I'm going to give you a little bit of an education. All right, I've got it. I'm back. So this is a track called Itch of the Battle, which is already brilliant. And like I said, off the album Through Sheer Will and Black Magic by Daeva, I just had to play you guys this, so you know why I keep referring to this whenever I'm benchmarking any Black and Thrash bands. And again, it's not like I expect every single band to sound exactly like Daeva, or Daeva has sort of spoiled the genre for me. I want to hear more great bands from that kind of subgenre. I just don't hear an awful lot that's exciting me. And actually, maybe upon reflection, perhaps that is because this album has ruined me for anything else. But you're going to find out why in just a second. That just fucking, that warms the cockles of my heart. I mean, that gives me tingles. Gives me tingles down below. Yeah, I fucking love that. Love it. Beyond top notch. And that breakdown that we just heard, it kind of kicked in about 20 seconds ago. Every single song on the record has that. Every song is fucking aggressive. It's rough and tough. It's nasty. You've got that raw but really beefy, punchy production. It's just perfect. It's a perfect album. I can't remember where I ranked it in the year that it came out, but frankly, again, you know, with all of these rankings, it very often it's like, this is how I feel at the time. And it can change depending on my mood or depending on how I feel. But this would be a top 5 record now, without a shadow of a doubt. I think it was relatively close to that in any case. If it wasn't, I post a public retraction right now. It moves to the number 5 slot of 2022's best. And hopefully these guys are going to be doing a new album at some point soon. I have noticed, looking on Metal Archives, that Frank Chin, the bassist, he's in... Well, I think he played bass on this album. He's in Cryptosis. And I know a lot of folks were raving about that band. But didn't really do all that much for me. I did also try and get in touch with one of these guys to get them on the podcast. And I would also repeat and stress once again, if anyone from Daiva is listening, you have an open invitation to come on Into the Necrosphere anytime you want. Into the Necrosphere will always be a friend of Daiva. But take my word for it. If you like what you just heard, you need to check out the rest of that record if you haven't done so yet. And then you can send me a message and say, thank you, Jackie. You were absolutely correct. They are fucking fantastic. All right, Cryptosis present Static Horizon as part of their upcoming full-length release, Celestial Death, due out on March the 21st on Century Media Records. Dutch Thrashers Cryptosis premiere a video clip for the third single titled Static Horizon. I'm almost sure we've heard something by these guys previously, but my thoughts on it have kind of disappeared. I can't remember whether I liked it or not, so let's hear what it sounds like.
From the shadows I am
That is pretty damn good. Really cool, catchy melody. Fucking badass riff. I love some of the little touches that they've thrown in there as well, like the I don't know the exact technique, so before some fucking I was gonna use the C word. Before some fucking septic tank jumps on the comments or jumps onto Instagram and goes again, you don't know how music works. When they're doing those kind of notes really kind of low down on the fretboard, those high squealing notes, I think that sounds really, really cool. That reminds me a little bit of when Akhlys did that on Corazon. Yeah, always really like that. It's kind of dissonant, but not in the kind of dissonant death metal sense. You guys know what I'm talking about. Great drummer, Marco Prij, if that's how his surname is pronounced, fucking knows his shit. And understandably so, the dude's been in a shitload of bands. Blasphemy Night, in Aphelion, Fifth Angel, Skeletal Remains. I mean, in Aphelion and Skeletal Remains alone, that's already, sets you at a certain level. And then Lawrence Hovost, the vocalist, it reminds me of Chuck Schuldiner. Like there's a real kind of Chuck Schuldiner bent. I was trying to find the word. Bent to his voice, but he sounds really aggressive as well, really pissed off. Love this. Love it. That is a top notch for sure. And if I did listen to the previous stuff and it didn't kind of, it didn't make as big of an impression on me, I might need to go back now and give it a listen again. Because, yeah, really, really enjoyed it. Okay, let's see if there's one more before we take a quick skim through the Democrats' Guide to Rock Music. We've got Candlemass performing one show with Messiah Marcolin. We've also got Vulvectomy, who are premiering a new single. Let's actually check that out. I always find names like this, Vulvectomy or fucking Vulvodynia. Like, what's with the brutal death metal fixation on vulvas? I don't get it. Anyway, the monstrous beast that is Vulvectomy has crawled forth from its lair in the Italian sewers, it says, bringing with it an album that will scar you and vomit over the last grains of hope you have for mankind. Already top-notch to whoever wrote the press release. On April the 11th, the band will unleash aberrant vaginal gestation and prove once more that they are the ultimate manifestation of uncompromising, slamming, brutal death metal. Produced, engineered, and mixed at D-Beat Studio by Alessio Cattaneo, mastered at 16th Cellar Studio by Stefano Morabito. To taste the first piece of the new music, give it a listen, or give a listen to the track called... So, sorry, I couldn't help myself from laughing. Scrotal Abscess Drainage. Okay, I've got a good idea how this is likely to sound, but let's not speculate. Let's hear it. I dig it. It's heavy as fuck. It's aggressive. It's got really cool production. Love the drum sound. you know, I'm not going to be able to take 10 albums in a row that sound like that, but there's a certain charm to those guys, so they get a thumbs up. Okay, let's have a quick scan of the Democrats' Guide to Rock Music before we wrap things up. More news about Spirit Box. Who gives a fuck? Gene Simmons praises Ace Frehley and Peter Criss's early musical contributions to Kiss. Art Cruz joining Lamb of God was a life-changing experience. Let's see what else. Lamb of God's Mark Morton announces a new solo album, Without the Pain. Ex-Typo Negative guitarist is open to staging a hypothetical Pete Steele tribute concert. I would do something like that. It says here, in a new interview with Joshua Toomey of the Talk to Me podcast, ex-Typo Negative guitarist Kenny Hickey was asked if he would be open to teaming with the other surviving members of Typo Negative to stage a Pete Steele tribute concert with various guest musicians. He said, as transcribed by Blabbermouth, I think so. I would do something like that, absolutely, because at this point the band seemed to transcend into a whole new generation and stuff. And I think it would be really cool to get a couple of key singers, real guys, or maybe one guy or whatever, to come and do it as a tribute. Absolutely. Maybe 4 or 5 shows, something like that. If we can get Josh to do it, then yes, I'd be up for it. Josh, of course, Josh Silver of Typo Negative, keyboardist for Typo Negative. I mean, I was ranting last week about how nobody can ever replace Pete Steele. I strongly hold by that opinion. But as a one-off with a couple of vocalists, that actually might not be such a bad idea. You know, I don't want the band to even think of writing new material, doing new stuff, continuing the band, and I don't think that they will, in fairness. But you know, if you have, like, let's think of who could be good options to have sing some of those songs. I mean, if you've got Kenny on stage, he can do some of the backing vocals. Maybe you can even take over some of the main vocal parts. Maybe you've got their Sun Don't Shine bandmate, Kirk Winstein, he of Crowbar fame. For sure you want to get him in that. I'm trying to think who else. That's the problem. I mean, who could possibly come close to sniffing Pete Rod of Steel's jock when it came to singing? I just don't. I just cannot. Like, I love Kirk's vocals, and he's one of my favorite vocalists of all time. But he's basically the only guy I can think of. Maybe you could get somebody like Matt Pike in there. I can't think of anyone else. You guys let me know if you think there's anybody that could cut the mustard, but I don't personally see all that many other people. You know, people might be inclined to say, well, you know, maybe take somebody from, you know, this doom band or this death doom band or whatever, but that to me it doesn't work either, because Typo Negative, even though it was actually there are some songs that are authentically depressing and come from a authentic lived experience, authentic darkness, there was also a tongue-in-cheek element to the way Pete did basically everything, and let's be honest, a masculinity to the way that he did everything that I just don't think anyone could possibly recreate. I don't think there's a single person alive, and I would bet that there won't be a single person to ever come around that could do what he did. So that's just my view on that. But I wouldn't hate the idea. I actually think what they should do is try to get Josh back and just use the Sun Don't Shine lineup. Are they called Sun Don't Shine? Let me double check on that one. I'm sure they are. As a matter of fact, I know there's actually a new single doing the round. Yeah, it's called Sun Don't Shine. Maybe we'll get to that. Maybe we'll wrap up with that one. Max Cavalera on re-recordings of early Sepultura albums. We had a chance to redo something that we weren't totally happy with. I'm not going to read this article, but I want to see one thing. Who in the fuck is Ian McCallum, And why does he have an opportunity to speak to Max, and I have yet to be able to do so? 55 subscribers. You've got to be fucking shitting me. After 129 videos. He gets Max on his show, but thus far, all I get is fucking stone silence. That is some bullshit. So I'm going to see if I can change that, because yes, there's been much mocking, much ball busting about Max's lyrics basically all being post Chaos AD being fuck all your politics, fuck all your bullshit. But as I said the other day, after those re-recordings, I have a newfound love for the man, and he can basically do whatever he wants going forward. I would also love to have either him or Igor on. King Diamond working on 10 new songs for upcoming album. That would be. I mean, that previous King Diamond single they released, it wasn't dreadful, but also didn't blow my mind. I hinted earlier at Gojira winning 2025 Best Metal Performance Grammy for Olympic Games song Mea Culpa. Fucking one of the most overrated bands, in my opinion. I can't stand them. Just nothing about Gojira that I like. I used to think they were okay, and then when they started flapping on about saving Mother Earth and all this, that, and the other, I was so done with it. I want to take care of the planet as much as the next guy. But the level of preaching, and it's not even the level of preaching as much as it is the constant affront to my intelligence with everything that comes out of Joe Duplantier's mouth. And the fact that you have all of these mind-melted fans just sitting there going, yes, he really knows what's up. He's really smart. Okay. Anyway, fuck all that. Let's wrap up with Sun Don't Shine, like I suggested. They've got a new single out. I have actually not listened to this yet. It was out 8 days ago. It is called The Promise Song. And of course, Sun Don't Shine is the band formerly called, what did they call themselves? They were called something else previously. We'll figure that out in just a second. Let's whilst I try and unravel that mystery, let's hear what The Promise Song sounds like. It's good, but it needs more Winstein. I'm going to say the same thing that I said about the previous single that we listened to. And by the way, they used to be called I Am. I don't know. I can't actually believe that I forgot that. But yeah, the band used to be called I Am, changed their name to Sun Don't Shine. Neither name I'm particularly thrilled with. But what this needs, without any question, is more Winstein. I don't know why you would have a vocalist like that in the band and not have him singing for at least 50% of the time. I like Kenny's vocals very much. I think Kenny's a superb guitarist as well. The interplay between him and Pete Steele, back in the day with Typo Negative was something to behold. And I'm very, very happy that I got to see them live. But in a band like this, you need to get Kirk on, and he needs to be doing Kirk vocals. It's the same for me as with Down. I understand Phil is Phil. He's iconic. Icon to some, villain to others. But why would you have Kirk in the band and not use that voice? I mean, that is one of the most unique, powerful, emotive, recognizable voices in all of metal. It's like having a... I'm trying to think I don't want to use a car analogy again, but it's late on a Friday afternoon, so I'm going to. It's like having a fucking Ferrari in the garage and just going, I just want to look at it from time to time. You need to let it out. You need to take it for a drive. Anyway, folks, I'm going to wrap up. I'm actually away on business for the majority of next week. So by the time you guys see this, I'm going to be on the mean streets of Cambridge. I think as a result, unfortunately, I'm missing the Biohazard show, because if memory serves me correctly, they're playing imminently. Oh no, actually, sorry, March 4th they're playing, so I might still be able to catch that. But either way, I'm going to be away for a couple of days, not particularly in the mood for it, but I did ensure, as you can see, that you guys get a show all the same. I'm also going to play out with another classic, and I said it last week. I'm going to say it again. The last song of every episode of Into the Necrosphere from 4 weeks ago and onward, until we get to episode hopefully 7,000 and I kick the bucket, is always just going to be the tough stuff. It's going to be old school classics, gems you might have forgotten about, and what fits the bill better than Sathanas with Unleashing the Wolves from their fucking brilliant record, Entering the Diabolic Trinity. That's what we're going to wrap up with. I would like to say to all of you, thank you very, very much for checking out the podcast, whether you are a new listener or old. Thank you so much to Mike for his time. And I'll be back next week. My man Matteo from the band Sarcator is going to be my guest. And may I say, what a delightful young man. You're going to see exactly what I mean if you tune in next week. In the meantime, Legion, whatever it is that you are doing and wherever it is that you are, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you bad motherfuckers again next week.